So now we've seen, first of all, what a force is. So what is a force? A force is simply a push or a pull. That's it. Second, so what are the various specifications that you need to make on force? So basically, what are the types of forces? So we've seen in the last video that forces can be either external forces or internal forces. What are internal forces? Well, in this case, in this object, if let's say there is some rat inside this object, or some small, some rat, let's say Mickey Mouse is inside this object, and if I place it this way and it tries to push the this cylindrical object and move it, will he be able to move it? No. Why? Because the force that mouse is applying on the walls of the object, those forces are internal forces, because they generate from within the system that is in consideration, and an internal force will not affect the state of motion and will not accelerate or decelerate the object. On the other hand, if there is some other person like me who is outside the object, applies an external force, which could be a push like this, or maybe a pull like that, so I can change the state of motion from rest to motion. In other words, I can accelerate the object or decelerate the object. So whenever we talk about changing the motion or accelerating an object, we are talking about the external force that is being applied on the object. So the force should be external for the state of rest or motion to be changed, and the force should be unbalanced. So in the last video, we had seen that what are unbalanced forces and balanced forces. So quick review. Balanced forces are those forces that cancel out completely. So in this case, if from one hand I pull it in this way, in this direction, and on the other hand I pull it in that direction, and I pull them with equal magnitudes, with equal force, I will not be able to move this in any direction. Okay, because this force is cancelling this force, and so the forces should be opposite, and if they cancel out perfectly, those forces are said to be balanced forces, and those forces will not accelerate or decelerate an object. So if I push it from both the sides with equal forces, I will not be able to accelerate or decelerate the object. So now that we have the two conditions, we can frame this into one statement and write that as our first law of motion. So firstly, we need to have a force to change the state of motion of the object, or in other words, accelerate it, and that force should be, first of all, an external force, and it should be an unbalanced force. Only then I can move the object. So if I say that in a statement, an external unbalanced force will only change the state of rest or motion. Or if I state that in one statement, I can say that this object will continue to remain in motion when in motion, or will continue to stay at rest when at rest, until an external unbalanced force is applied on that object. So in simpler words, if this is moving, it will continue to move, or if this is at rest, it will stay at rest until any external something that is generated from outside the system, unbalanced, that is not being cancelled by some other force, acts on this object, and if that such a force acts, the object will accelerate or it may decelerate depending on the direction of motion and the force that is being applied. So that is the simple statement of the first law of motion given by Newton, and therefore Newton's first law of motion.